Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Blog Talk Radio with Kristen talking about Kundalini. I always mess that up. Anyway, hello, everyone, and welcome. And I'm just going to launch right into it today, as usual. Today, I've been given to talk about Kundalini and narcissism. It's not the narcissism that you would typically see, say, with a movie star or CEO or anything like that, and yet there are similarities. It's an extreme level of ego expression that can, inside of an exaltation, it can slip into a person's emotional body and ego body, and also it can also be pushed or supported through entity infestation. Many times during the Kundalini Awakening process, especially if you've just done it, the Kundalini just came onto you and you weren't asking for it, you weren't looking for it, and yet even if you were asking for it and looking for it, nobody can truly be prepared for what it's like to have the divine come into the five bodies of the human expression. And so it's a huge jolt to the system, and within that jolt and within that struggle to maintain balance, to maintain your life has been living it, eating and providing for your family or providing for yourself, or things of this nature. It's very important to understand that an entity can slip in. There is a certain subtle form of entity that the Kundalini will allow to slip into you to begin to push a narcissistic attitude. Narcissism it's really all about ego. It's about self-aggrandizement, wanting to be recognized as an authority, or wanting to be recognized as having power, and wanting to be basically recognized as more than other people, or inside of a competition or competitive type of an attitude where, yes, I am Master Krishna, I am so much more powerful than everybody else. No, it's not like, this entity is allowed to slip in there because Kundalini knows that eventually it's going to produce a flower that is tainted. A tainted flower, a tainted rose. It's very important for people to understand that inside of the exaltation of Kundalini, one must always remain humble, and humble about who they think they are. I just got off of a little message there on Facebook about a person who really wants to be seen as the Jiva Mukti, the great and powerful Oz, and really it is like the great and powerful Oz. It's some middle-aged balding guy behind a curtain, working a machine. The machine would be the Kundalini Awakening person, and the facade is really the ego of the individual trying to make themselves out to be this huge, great master of the universe, and it's very, very important for people to understand that this is, even though you do have a great level of power with Kundalini, you don't have power to express the ego through the Kundalini. When this is done, a cap is put over the individual. A cap is put over the individual, and that individual begins to accrue karma by virtue of an ego gone run amok, or an ego gone bad, or a very terrible expression of jilted enlightenment being framed as an enlightened individual. And I told this person, you really need to get a hold on your ego. You really need to begin to look at who you are, how you are, why you are, what you are, where you are, and get a hold of that ego right now, early on in your process, so that you don't go around making huge mistakes and accruing karma that can take lifetimes to remediate. It's very important that this embedded entity, or you could even consider it an embedded program. It's a trap that people will fall into because they want to feel special. They want to feel in charge or in control. And sometimes if they feel that they can control everybody outside of them, that they can control themselves inside of them. And that's just not the case. It's the other way around. You surrender yourself to the Kundalini, and the Kundalini begins to help you control yourself from the inside out. And from that inside out perspective, the outside of you becomes far more discernible, far more understanding than the ego trying to manifest itself as a god or goddess without the wisdom or the clarity or the truth to back them up. So narcissism within a Kundalini context is an extremely important subject. And I'm coming down on Chrism a little hard for not talking about this sooner. Maybe in some of the other earlier shows, and I apologize to the audience for that. It's an extremely important concept, and I have been called this, by the way. I've been very familiar with being called a narcissist because, within the group setting, at least, within the group setting, and some of the private students as well, when the Kundalini gives me a direction or a command to have a person do a certain thing, they're going to rebel. Their ego's going to rebel, and because it's got to be done that way, and it begins to really resemble my way or the highway type of a scenario, well then, the whole idea of narcissism comes up. Within the group context, because of the groups that I have are strictly for Kundalini. The only one being a little easier with that would be Kundalini Awakening Systems 3 on Yahoo or on Facebook. But for the most part, the other groups are all about the Kundalini and the Kundalini truth that as it has been expressing itself through me. And this truth calls to people. And these people join. They may not realize they've been called by that level of truth, but I think many of them do have that understanding that they've been called by this level of truth. And I do not claim to own this truth. I am used by this truth. It brings to mind the idea of Pinocchio or a marionette, a puppet on a string. And I think that to some degree we are all puppets on strings. But certainly within the Kundalini context, within the teachings that I give, I'm not sitting here in this chair in this living room with Lasha dreaming up instructions for people. It flows through me. It's like this show. Much of the time, it's a streaming consciousness that comes through, and the streaming consciousness is straight from the Kundalini awakening within me. And so on the groups, it's a very strict thing. You talk about the Kundalini and only about the Kundalini, nothing else but the Kundalini. If you don't mention Kundalini in your post, you can expect to hear from me. And that can easily be misconstrued by those who are not activated or understanding of the Kundalini as narcissism. And I just want to make that correction here right now. I don't feel myself as a narcissistic individual. And yet, from the unawakened, on the outside looking in, that I could understand why they think that would be the case. And as much as I can, I want to ameliorate that problem, give a healing to that issue, and I do. Certainly within my one-on-one interactions, if the Kundalini allows me to do that. Why wouldn't she allow me to defend myself against narcissism? Well, she doesn't really care about ego eccentricities, except when they get in the way of her giving herself and Shiva giving himself through the individual. And for me to defend against that is just using, it's an ego thing as well. And so I don't typically defend myself against it, but if it does get in the way of the teachings, I will clear that up with people. And I just want people to know this. It's very, very, very important for people to understand that Kundalini is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you divinity. It's a very real thing. And this insertion of an ego trap for a person to step into is allowed by the Kundalini. It may have happened early on in a person's process, and they may be having great levels of Kundalini experience and wisdom and all this stuff, but still, there is that corruption, however big or little it may be. There is that corruption within that individual that is flavoring and beginning to sour their experience and to rot from the inside their enlightenment equation. And I want to make this very clear. This is something that is very, very true. And I don't care if it's, let me give you an example. What was his name? Oh, gosh. Sri Rajneesh. But they changed his name to Osho because he had such a bad rep with Sri Rajneesh. I forget his last name. His last name, it's not even a last name. It's more of a title. This is the guy that started that his followers came in and voted themselves into the city council of this small town in Oregon, and basically took over the town from the citizens that had been there before, and they renamed the town Rajneeshpuram. And they became the police force, and they became, the city council, and they became the business owners, and because a lot of the other residents left because they didn't want to be a part of Rajneeshpuram. Not that Rajneeshpuram is wrong. I think it's a very, very interesting social experiment. But Osho, with all of his amazing levels of wisdom, amazing levels of clarity and gifts of Shakti, he was ensnared. He stepped into that trap, and he was ensnared, and it was not going to end well with him. I mean, this is the guy that collected 350 Rolls Royces, and I don't know how many other really expensive watches and jewelry and money and land and all of these things, to the point where he would say gleefully to the audience, "I am the rich man's guru." If I were to say that, I'd say, "I am the poor man's guru." I have a pickup and a car that don't even run, and I still have to register and pay for them. And the food I have in the fridge right now is watermelon lemonade, which is good, by the way. I suggest everybody to get that watermelon lemonade if they have a Whole Foods in their area. It's very good. And so this is a very important subject, and I am remiss in not speaking of it earlier and over and over and over again. For those of you that have the Kundalini working through them, I know Cole, you do, Phil, Mary Jean, all these, Emma for sure, and Elizabeth, Santara. These folks have Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. This is the gentleman that did that, and he stepped into that trap, and he was addicted to nitrous oxide, which is what the dentist gives you and is commonly referred to as laughing gas, although it's never made me laugh. Of course, sitting in the dentist chair for me is fairly traumatic anyway. He fell into this trap, and he began to live the ego infestation rather than living the Kundalini. And yet, the strongest danger of this was he was still giving out really good wisdom teachings. He was still able to do these things at the same time he was living a corrupted life. See what I'm saying? This is very important for you to realize that trap is there, and it will be there until it'll actually be there all the way through your enlightenment period while you're there on the world in a physical being. It will always be there. And you must always step around that trap. Do not fall into self-aggrandizement. It's a big deal, folks. It's a big deal, and it is one of the most common corruptions of Kundalini awakened individuals. And I mean, these are people that have been God-realized, self-realized, Shaktipat realized. It doesn't matter how you got it. It's a part of the deal. And you need to look at it and understand it. And always be humble. Always be a non-self-aggrandizing person. This is extremely important. Narcissism within the Kundalini awakened potential is also amplified. And so if you started out just being a little narcissistic, well, whoa, hello. You're going to be very, very, very strongly narcissistic if you're not taking care to look at that aspect of yourself and not step into that trap. When I first became activated, or actually awakened, when I had the first, when the spine turned into a serpent, the very first effect she had on me was really to make me homeless. And I became homeless for 12 years. And during that homeless period, there isn't a lot of room for self-aggrandizement. Now, I know some folks that become, homeless or poor, they go out of their way to build up their ego because inside themselves they're feeling so low and so misbegotten and so weak and so emotionally infirmed, which I did have that. But I didn't, because I didn't know what it was at first. I wasn't able to really fall into that ego trap. I recognized the trap later on. When I first started to teach, I recognized the trap, and I recognized that those 12 years of homelessness served me very well. They served me tremendously well because the only way out of my predicament was to give service. And to give service in many different ways. I was giving service to the homeless. I was working with 2 MDs, and I was giving medical service to the homeless through the Catholic Charities here in Santa Rosa. And but I remember walking the streets. And what happened here? Oh, I see. I remember walking the streets. My computer just went black. I remember walking the streets, and that reminds me. I need to do a sound check. Cole or Mary Jean or Emma or Phil or Vince, can you let me know that I'm not just talking to the air here? Can somebody write and say, "Oh, you're not talking to the air," because I appreciate it. I don't think I am. I think it's coming through okay. That's my intuition's telling me it's coming through fine. But just in case not. Okay, sound is good. Thank you, Mary Jean and Cole and Emma. Thank you. I remember walking the streets of Santa Rosa, completely homeless and surrounded by all of this opulent wealth. Santa Rosa in Sonoma County is very much like many of the wine growing regions in France because people love their alcohol so much. There's a lot of money in the Santa Rosa area. And I just remember walking amongst all this wealth and just kind of like feeling like I was on a different planet. Sorry, I laughed and I moved my computer here. Sorry about that. And walking the streets and feeling really kind of like so not fitting in and so not understanding what was occurring until I did find out what was going on. And once I did find out, it really clicked within me to not self-aggrandize. It was a very, very, very clear instruction from the Kundalini for me, because she had me in that position. She had me as a homeless man who was fully able to work. I could do so many different jobs. Even now, I'm looking for work right now, and there's so many different things that I can do, but I'll have to move away from here to do them. Agricultural work, medical work, all kinds of different things that I can do. And for the longest time, she wouldn't allow me to work. I did not have the option. It's certainly within the fragmentation. And this type of self-aggrandizement can enter into a person within the fragmentation as well. When you're fragmenting within the Kundalini, well, all of your defenses are down. And that entity can slip in and begin to just harbor itself within your 5 bodies of expression, typically within the ego body, by the way, and implant itself and just wait. It will just wait. It will suck a bit of your energy, but not so much that you'd notice. And it'll just wait for you, and it'll wait for an opportunity to kind of put a question in your head. It's like, well, you're powerful. Why don't you just do this? Or you're powerful. Why don't you just do that? And it begins to, and it doesn't say anything bad. It just begins to let you know how powerful you are, and how perhaps after a year or two of this, it'll increase its communication with you and say, well, you know you're powerful. You've proven it. You have these wisdom teachings, just like Ocho. You have these wisdom teachings. You're powerful. You may have even written a book. You're powerful. Why not just be recognized for that? Boom! The trap has sprung, if you buy into it. The trap has been sprung, and gently, it's a velvet trap. Okay? It's a velvet trap, and that velvet trap springs closed, and it actually feels good. It's like, wow, you're right. I am powerful. But I shouldn't advertise that. But I feel it, but I shouldn't. And then it just begins. This is where the rot within begins, because you have stepped into that velvet trap now, and it is beginning to give you subtle, soft suggestions of self-aggrandizement over and over and over and over. And if you have a teacher, it begins to distance you from the teacher. Well, that person guy, he's nice. I love him and all, but he's not here with me right now. And, maybe I just don't need to do the exercise that he asked me to do. Maybe because I'm powerful. Maybe I don't need to follow his instructions because I'm powerful. And I don't need to have somebody tell me to do this or to do that because I'm powerful. You see, it keeps coming back to that same old theme, that same old line. And you really, really need to watch this, my friends. All of you listening right now here in the chat room, all of you listening to this broadcast in the future, yes, you are powerful. But you're only powerful through the grace of the divine. You're not powerful just because you are Kundalini awakened. That's giving you the key to the heavenly fields, and you can walk the heavenly fields, but you got to know how to do that. Power, in many cases, within the Kundalini context, or at least actually outside of the Kundalini context, within the ego world, power is all about having sway or having coercive ability over other people. Power. How many people would say, yeah, I feel really powerful today because I was able to open that mayonnaise jar. Not that anyone in their right mind would eat mayonnaise. That's just me. That's a joke. Or if you're opening this jar of tomato sauce, and it's like, I'm powerful, man. I was able to open that jar of tomato sauce. No, what they will say is like, I'm powerful. I was able to manipulate millions of people. Look at Donald Trump as a great example of overt, obvious self-aggrandizement. Donald Trump sees power on the outside. On the inside, something very different is going on. And I'm just using his outward excess as an example. Power is money. Power is position. You see, Donald Trump has a lot of money. It's like $9 billion or so, but he's running for president because he doesn't have the position. Okay. So he wants power and the power of position, not the power of just being able to to have all your needs met or manipulate, millions of people. This is the trap that is set for the Kundalini awakened person almost immediately, if you know what it is. It's very important for you to go within and to look at this. And I'm going to introduce my co-host for this program, Amelia Santara, who has done very, very, very many beautiful, wonderful things for so many people on this program. And that in itself, when I say that, I am giving her a temptation to step into that velvet trap of narcissism. And I just want to welcome you to the trap there, Amelia. Hello.
Hi, Chrism. Can you hear me?
I can hear you
Alex,
fine.
wonderful.
And the title of this show, Amelia, I want it to be Narcissism, the Velvet Trap, and Kundalini. And Heli Hainonen is writing. Heli is writing, Chrism, can you talk about devotion? When I do my devotion, I don't have so much pain. I have been very lazy with safeties, and now I'm really feeling and seeing how much safeties really help you in everyday life. Yes, indeed. Heli, I will definitely talk about that later on in the program, certainly. Santara, what do you think of this topic?
Chrism, narcissism, the velvet trap, and Kundalini. I'm writing it down. Is that what you said?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Wow, Chrism, as you were talking, I was thinking, how come you haven't spoken about this before to this extent? Because it's huge, isn't it? What can I say? I know that I have had that trap happen. I've had it happen in many different ways. I can't think offhand of an example, Chrism, but I do know that I remember, for example, now just off the top of my head, one of the teachings you would have given me that was connected into this more than once was about not defending myself. In situations where I wanted to express a sort of a self-aggrandizement, or where I wanted to express where I thought I was being unjustly treated. I wanted to let it be known that I was hurt, whereas in actual fact, what my ego was really wanting to express was that I was right, and it wanted to express how great I was. And I wouldn't have seen that as being what I was actually doing, but you did. And so in the context of my relationship as a student, you would have said to me, you are not to respond to that at all. And I can remember going, and so I would have been forced into a position of not being able to allow that aspect of me take over in specific situations. And so I just wanted to say that, and that would be one aspect that I can remember. The defense of what you want to defend yourself. You see that as being justified, whereas in actual fact, it can be, a form of self-aggrandizement that you actually want to express.
Have you seen
sense?
yourself? Have you experienced yourself within the teachings that I've given to you? Have you experienced the desire to just disobey the instruction? And then,
no, never.
have you followed through on it?
Yeah. The interesting thing, because I've been your student for a long time, I have had different experiences of that. So sometimes it can come as, sometimes it can be very blatant and I am feeling very strong in the fact that I have made a commitment to follow your instructions, which are the instructions of the Kundalini for me. But sometimes, you know what you were saying earlier about I am powerful. I would never have got that particular line, but
No.
I
I
would
mean,
have got.
it wouldn't be just those words. It was like, it would be something like, I can do anything. You know,
Yeah,
I can do anything. I don't have to, I don't have to do that.
I'm okay. Yeah, mine would be I'm okay without doing that. You know, I can do that. I'm okay, because that's I would tend, yeah. So that's really, really velvet, isn't it?
It's really velvet. It's very soft, and the ego just loves it.
Yeah. Because if I was to hear I am powerful, I would immediately go, oh,
Right.
come on, girl. Whereas, I'm okay. Now that's acceptable. So I would have had that given to me. And the temptation to not do, and of course there were times when I followed that, but mostly, that's one of the great things, though, about when you're in a commitment to knowing that what has been given to you is because it's seen exactly where you're at in your process, So it's trusting that. But yes, I agree with you, Chrism. I have had plenty of the I'm okay, I don't need
and you're not alone with that. You're not alone with, like I said, I mean, this came to Osho. This came to Muktananda. This came to these people. And, Vivekananda, Yogananda, these people had this velvet trap open for them. And, a lot of these other teachers that I just mentioned, minus Osho, were so steeped into their belief system that I believe the teachings of Sanatana and some of the other sacred Hindu teachings would have you look out. They would see that as a body of expression to avoid.
Yes.
But for people that are just like in the natural, the wild awakening people, which is what we are, the wild awakeners, they wouldn't have that opportunity to look at that as a trap, or they would look at that as a self-empowerment. They would look at that as self-empowerment and basically fall into that trap. Very, very, very important for people to not step into that trap. For some of my private students, I'm so harsh. As you may know, Amelia, I have you do the worst things you could possibly do. Really, can I say a few things that I've had you do, Amelia?
I'm sure you've shared them already.
Thank you. As many of you may not know, in Ireland, the weather can get fairly cold, which means the fresh water streams and creeks and rivers can get fairly cold. Well, I would have Amelia immerse herself completely into really cold water and hang out there for a while her husband John would watch her to make sure she doesn't, drown or anything like that. Remember those days?
I remember those days. Yeah.
And, this is the type of thing that flies in the face of, oh, I don't need to do that. It's like, I'm okay. I'm okay not doing that.
I'm okay. Absolutely.
Yeah, this flies in the face of that, and I think it's very important for people to understand that you are not okay not doing those things. These teachings, these difficult teachings that I give people to do are so that you will not step into that trap. Okay, it's very, very, very important for people to understand that you don't step into that velvet trap. And the narcissist within you will go, well, I have the Kundalini. I can do whatever I need to do. And, I kind of listen to Chrism because, I like some of the things that he says. And, he's got a beard and, sometimes he wears orange and whatever the excuse may be. Hopefully not the last two excuses. I don't feel I need to do that. And off they go. They step right into that trap. It's very, very difficult in the early aspects of an awakening process to discern that this trap is being set for you, but it is. Unless you're already in extremely difficult circumstances like I was, it's very easy to fall into that trap. Very, very easy to fall into that trap. And it's very important for you to understand, those of you early in the awakening, that you do not have any power. You are the most meek, you are the most humble person, and this is why grace has come to you. It didn't come to you because you were, the best person on the football field. It didn't come to you because you're the most beautiful person on the magazine cover. It didn't come to you because you have power. It didn't come to you because you're so religious. It came to you by the grace of the divine. And you are not powerful. Grace is powerful. Now, it just so happens that your body is set up to be able to have that grace come through you. But it is not the ego you. And the other aspect of this is those that have, they're early, like I was, early in my activation. Excuse me, I'm going to turn this thing off. Yeah, I've got to turn them all off, it seems. Just a second here. As pretty as the sounds are, we don't need those sounds right now. Okay, come on, go off. There we go. All right. We all live in a society where the ego is supported fully by almost everyone. Okay. Even in prison, there are egos there. There, people separate into gangs or whatever. Ego is alive and present in our society, and it is supported by our society. And for those of you that have kids, you're teaching your children to obey the ego. And that is right. That is right. You should do that. The ego is one of the things that we first recognize as who we are. It allows a 2-year-old to say, no, Mommy, I don't want those creamed of mushroom. Yes. No, I won't do that. And at the same time, Mommy might have Kundalini, and Mommy is teaching child to respect the ego. At the same time, she's being taught to disrespect her own. And it's a very, very slippery slope when you're raising the kids. And even after you raise the kids, say the kids are adults right now, that teaching that you gave them is still within you because it is part of your life. It is part of your life experience. A very precious part of a parent's life experience is remembering what they had to do to train their 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old child.
Kristen?
How to respect the ego. Yes.
Oh, no. Hello? Is it me or you?
I'm here.
Who's gone?
Okay, sound check, please. Mary Jean, Emma, Cole, Vincent, sound check. Uh-oh. Okay, Emma's typing. Yeah, okay. Santara just got dropped. She just got dropped. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for responding. It's always a mystery here with Blog Talk Radio. Okay, I'm going to just go ahead and continue. So as you're raising your children and you're teaching them to respect the ego, the Kundalini is also raising her child, which is you, teaching you not to respect the ego. You see? You can kind of see the conundrum that may be happening with that. It's very important for an individual to realize that when they're raising their kids, they are not the child that they are raising, even though that child is comprised of who they are, physically, genetically. mentally and emotionally, and even spiritually in some cases. You see how this can be slippery with an individual. You're teaching the child to respect the survival trait of the ego at the same time that you're being taught by your divine father and mother not to respect that ego. You're teaching the child to become somewhat of a narcissist at the same time that you're being offered a trap of narcissism by the Shakti and Shiva Kundalini, sacred male, sacred female, Kundalini. You see where this can get a little confusing for folks? You see where it can become very, very, very easy for a parent to slip into the understanding that as you tell your 3-year-old, honey, you are just the most beautiful, most wonderful child in the world. I want you to have some, pay attention to mommy and daddy. Do everything that we tell you to do. Respect yourself, respect other people, but mostly understand that you are a very great, you can do anything you want in this world. Think about the words that you're saying to this kid. Think about the words that you're saying to yourself. It is very, 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 very true. This is a truth. And I think anybody that is having the Kundalini will understand how important this is to look at and to feel constantly on a day-to-day, hour by hour, minute to minute, second to second, nanosecond to nanosecond thought of your life. Am I stepping into that velvet trap? Am I becoming a narcissist because I have this great power that we all recognize as Kundalini? And as I teach my children, do I not feel that teaching within myself? Am I not being authentic with my teachings to my child? Am I able to step back and discern that what I teach my child, I don't necessarily need to emulate? Think about it. In many ways, in the States at least, the United States, and I think Western Europe as well, we teach our children to become narcissists for their own survival. To live in a society that worships the ego in every aspect of self-aggrandizement, do we not teach our child to learn how to swim in those waters? Now, of course, as the child grows older, and we learn to be forgiving and to be grateful and to be less of an expressive narcissist. And yet the narcissism seed has been planted. And so when Kundalini comes along, the velvet trap has been intact since childhood, since infancy. And do you know not to step into it? Do you know how to recognize it? Do you know how to step over or around it? You see, this is why I want to do this program. I'm going to invite Elizabeth onto the program now. Hello, Elizabeth and Laranya. Welcome.
Hello. Hi, Prism. Hi, everybody.
Hi. How do you feel about this topic?
Oh, well, I think it's extremely important, and I think it was right on what you said about, sticking to the truth and the Kundalini, which is the same, one and the same. And I know personally, my Kundalini keeps a really rigid, in other words, I have to give in order to receive, and I have to give something to her in order to have things, if I stop doing my work, if I stop doing what you say, for instance, she stops. I have to keep it going. I have to, I feel like she keeps me in check, and I have to keep myself in check, of course, but I just think remembering that it's about the Kundalini and keeping it about the Kundalini, and that all the power, if there is any that is, or grace that is given, it's a gift for the divine to use for the divine's use. And so I just try to remember that it's never about me, and it's never for me to wield against anyone else or be superior over anyone else, or, and then also I was thinking, she gives me, I have a level of narcissistic people in my family and in my work and in different areas of my life where I'm always held in check. There's always someone who is superior to me, or in other words, they sort of are lording that over me. And I think it just teaches me to be humble about it. And a lot of times, especially with the people in my family, I just let them think that because it doesn't harm me. It doesn't do me any harm. And it's actually, and I don't even know if that's the right thing to do, but I just feel like if they want to feel that they're better than me, more superior to me, they know more than me, they're more intelligent than me, they're more power, let them go ahead and think that. It doesn't hurt me. It doesn't change anything about me. It doesn't change who I am. And I can still be loving and kind, and I need to be that and be tolerant and not let it make me go to places of anger or to be competitive or try to compete against. And when I feel that I'm in a situation where I can see myself starting to compete, I have to check myself, and I have to say, oh, no, you're not, you're not going to do that. You're going to pull that back, and you're going to look at that, and you're going to go and meditate on that for a few thousand hours or whatever I need to do, But that's it. And also, when you were talking about our children, it made me think of, because my childhood was very filled with abuse, verbal abuse by one of my parents. So I grew up always thinking that I was stupid, and I'm not going to say, the words I was called and things that made me grow up with that low self-esteem and just always feeling bad about myself. So with my daughter, I do, though, have to watch that I don't overcompensate, like you said, and just completely be like, everything you do is great, beautiful, you're this, you're that, but I do try to instill a level of self-esteem with her and for her in the things that she excels at, but there's a fine line between, you just made me think of that there's a fine line between helping her feel good about herself and not overdoing it.
Yes, it's a definitely fine line between helping her feel good about herself and then helping her to enable her ego to take over. And plus, she's an only child. There's, she's even got more. With an only child, how do you learn to share?
Yeah, exactly.
You share with, it's a different deal when you're an only child. So yeah, well, I want to thank you for that perspective. That's an excellent perspective. And I'm going to continue with this. Because within this concept, it's so deep and it's so strong that we really do need to look at this clearly. Everybody that has Kundalini activated, or certainly within the awakening context after they've had a spinal sweep, is open to this type of a trap. To fall into, and more so with the wild awakeners than with the awakeners within, say, a religious understanding that recognizes this, as some of the ancient Rishi teachings understood, like say in the in the Rig Veda. They understand these things, and in a poetic form, they teach you about how not to fall into this trap. And also there are various religions out there that most people tend to look over, because like in Buddhism and Christianity, the Buddhists can be very, very, very humble people. Extremely humble people. Well, so can the Christians. In the Christianity, if you look at the life of a saint, it's not the easiest life, and it certainly isn't a life where you have been adulated the whole time. Okay? And so through that teaching of modesty and humility and humbleness, these teachings are the ones that you really want to look at strongly in clearing you away from the infestation and the level of rot that can occur inside of a person who is basically recognizing themselves as a great incarnation of a Jiva Mukti, which means very powerful person, and into an area where they don't fall victim to their own ego and entity-supported self-aggrandizement. We live in a world of competition, extreme competition. We look at the wild nature, the jungle around us, and we see extreme competition there. I've got a half wolf and a German shepherd here with me, and they constantly compete with each other. If one's getting love, the other wants love. If one's getting a bone, the other wants that very same bone, and so on and so forth. And as mundane people look at this, they are taught this by nature, that in order to survive, you need to compete. If you don't compete well, you will die. See what I'm saying? So it's literally a life or death teaching. You either compete and live, or you don't compete and you die. And so this is the understanding that is brought into our sociological environment as well. And when Kundalini comes along, you have this tremendous power, and you can compete like nobody can compete, except you're not. This is not the path that you want to take. You are no longer bound by the same rules that competitive society is bound by. You have an edge that goes beyond the five bodies expressions of humanity. It goes beyond political or egoistic understandings of how life is to be lived. Now you're going beyond the terrestrial trap of dog eat dog, the law of the jungle. It's extremely important for people to understand this. And I wrote a small little article on the Kundalini Awakening group about the narcissism and Kundalini, but I wasn't covering these areas as much as I am right now. This is essential for people to not fall into the trap of their own ego, and often supported by entities. This teaching is so that you don't become so infused with your power, which isn't really yours, that you begin to destroy that which divinity is trying to create within you. Gods and goddesses do not need to compete. They are beyond competition. It reminds me of a very dear ex-student that I had a while back, and this person, definitely had an activation going, and I spent much time with them, much one-on-one time with them, and they were continuously, trying to advance themselves, but they fell into this trap, and they fell into the trap of yearning to be seen as powerful by other people. And as they were my students, they were not going to be recognized that way, because my Kundalini would not allow them to fall into the trap based upon my teachings to them. But their own egoistic teachings to themselves limited what they could do. They were capped. And I kept working with them and kept working with them and kept working with them in order to lift that cap, to let them get into the infinity of grace. And yet that velvet trap kept closing over their feet. They could not move out of that trap, and they became infested with entities. And they began to rot within themselves, within their own body. They begin to rot. And that decomposition of their enlightenment they began to relate to that more than the teachings of truth that they were receiving. And I had to let them go. I had to let them go because I could see, and I was told that they were not going to realize this. They would continue to rot. Another type of aspect, a facet of narcissism and Kundalini is, a person will be very, very, very profoundly affected by a teacher, and they will literally, become infatuated with the teacher, where the teacher is not in that way returning that type of infatuation. And when the student sees that they're, how do I say, they're adolescent, looking for a phrase here, I'll just call it pre-puberty type of love is not being returned. That turns into anger in them. It's just like, well, why not? Why isn't he returning that love, or why isn't she returning that love? And that can easily turn into hatred and make that person want to say the worst things about them. This has happened to me more than once. And there's nothing I can do about it. I cannot take them out of the trap of their own awakening. I cannot have them step out of the sewage of the ego that has claimed them. And they will make that karma. But because, I forgive them, but, other people that are maligned by that disinformation, that hurtful information, those lies, they will have to meet that karma at other times. You understand what I'm saying, everybody? So it's very important for people to understand that when you have the Kundalini come to you, activated or in the awakened state, either way, that trap of power you can step into. Now, those of you, very much like Elizabeth, I also had a very, very powerfully dysfunctional by societal standards, a very dysfunctional, very emotionally abusive and physically abusive childhood. And I never knew until I had the Kundalini, and before I had the Kundalini for a while, why that occurred. How important that was, that occurred. Because it gave a certain level of humility to me that I would not have had otherwise if my parents had been going, "Oh, Chris, you're just so wonderful. You're so, you could do anything you want in the world. You could be president of the United States. You could be as rich as Donald Trump. You could run for president. You could buy the presidency. You could do all these things. There are no limits on you, my son." Instead, I was whipped, I was slapped, I was abused verbally, emotionally, and I was always constantly questioning my motives. I was always constantly trying to compete and failing over and over and over. It's very important for people to understand that these trauma-based childhoods for Kundalini people serve them very, very well. Very, very well. Not only do they remediate karma, but they build an understanding of humility within a person, of being able to understand what it is to hurt, and therefore not to hurt. not to give pain, not to dish out pain that way, but also not to be so self-aggrandizing that you blind yourself to the truth around you just because you're winning. Now, later on in my teenage life, I certain skills were developed in me that really put me out in front of people. I mean, thousands of people, and I would excel in those arenas. But I always had that early childhood experience of not believing so fully in myself that it would harm, that it made me, a hugely egotistical person. And when the Kundalini came, there was, the thing that was amplified the most really was the humility and the desire to give service to people, rather than step into that velvet trap and give service just to myself. How many of you have experienced similar things? I know Elizabeth has, and Amelia has, and other people I know have as well. But this is very crucial. If great teachers such as Muktananda and Osho can fall into this trap, amidst the teachings of their culture that say don't, if they can fall into that trap, any of us within a Kundalini context can also fall into that trap. So if you're doing a practice, like say your teacher, not saying you're my student or anything, but I'm just saying if you have a teacher and your teacher is saying, well, I don't want you to drink alfalfa tea. You are forbidden to drink alfalfa tea, and the teacher lists the reasons that you're forbidden, makes it very clear. And then you go ahead and drink that alfalfa tea. What is that saying about you and your level of being ensnared in that velvet trap? And then say you do it on the holiest of the holy days. You defy that instruction by virtue of ego comforts, ego amicability, ego satiation. What does that say about you and your process, and whether or not you have indeed been ensnared by that velvet trap of Kundalini narcissism? When you find that you have to defend yourself to your teacher or to an idea of that say your Kundalini may be bringing to mind. Let me think. When you have to defend yourself against not being competitive. So it's like, what do you mean, Shakti? This is a competitive environment. If I don't eat, then I won't live. And if I don't compete, then I won't have the money to live. What happens then? Do you just say, forget it, Shakti, I'm going to go ahead and compete? Or do you trust your Kundalini and allow that to educate you and to bring you the sustenance that you need? So lately, I have, basically not eating, which is great for my weight and for my knees and my ankles and my toes and the arches of the foot and the waistline and I've lost 18 pounds, and in other terms like British terminology, I think that would be a little over 2 stones. Amazing. Anyway, so this has actually been serving me well, and yet I still need to eat, and I am totally dependent on the Shakti for that sustenance, and she has had me, write about getting a job, going out and doing the work. It doesn't mean that I'm going to dive into the competitive world of United States sociological competition. I'm not going to lose my Kundalini because I have to work. It just means that I'm going to have to go out there into the work world and make some money so that I can eat, because in order for me to do this work, I have to keep doing this. But I don't fall into the narcissistic aspect of it, you see. And I want to encourage all of you not to fall into that narcissistic attitude of the competition and the self-aggrandizement that awaits that gaping steel tooth trap that is waiting for you. I'm going to ask you to step around that trap. This other student I was telling you about, she would say things like, well, since I'm near the teacher all the time, therefore I know the teacher better than anybody else. As she looked at me, and I could see that she was totally infested with entities by that time. And I could see that she just was not going to recover from this in this lifetime. And that maybe she needed some distance from the power of the radiance of the teacher to maybe get some clarity for herself. They would also say things like, well, I've known him the longest, or I've been with him the longest, this type of stuff. And it's just, time doesn't care. Kundalini doesn't care about time you spend with a teacher. It cares about how you express itself through you and what attitudes and affirmations and levels of understanding that you take. And, I know some of you know who I'm talking about, but I'm not going to name this person, and all the while they want to be close to the teacher and to be recognized by the teacher and by the other students of the teacher. They're corrupting their own process because they have stepped not with one foot but with both feet into the trap of Kundalini amplified narcissism, the velvet trap. And they begin to rot within themselves. They begin to rot away their enlightenment potential. And they become about hatred and anger and retribution and revenge. Oh, he dropped me as a student. He's no longer my teacher. Oh my God, I hate him. That guy, that man, that he's not a real teacher. He's not teaching anything worthwhile. I don't respect him at all. And all those nasty things they say about him, well, that's absolutely true. And so on and so forth. Do you see what I'm saying? Kundalini is the most powerful force of grace that a human can experience on this world. Most powerful. And when you have that grace, the grace of God shining its light through your eyes from within to without, you have to be very careful. Especially the wild awakeners have to be very careful about not stepping into that velvet trap of narcissism. It will not serve you the way it would have served you when you were not awakened. And even in the unawakened, you can see these brutal narcissists. I mentioned one, Donald Trump, and so is Hillary Clinton. She's also a narcissist. The Social Democrats would have been the least narcissistic of the presidential aspirants within the United States at this time. Very, 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 very important. Now, I want to get to Helly's question here. She had a question back here. I'm going to go ahead and see it. She says, when I do my devotion, I don't have so much pain. I've been very lazy with safeties, and now I'm really feeling and seeing how much safeties really help in everyday life. Excellent, Helly. Excellent. And she said, I thought that now I'm so powerful, and I found out that I'm not without doing my devotion. Okay. I think your Kundalini is teaching you there, Helly. But it's so hard to live and feel and hear so many things that others can't, and nobody understands you. And then I left doing my safeties because I tried to be normal, and it didn't work. Now I'm feeling more awful than before. Well, Helly, you just go right back to doing those safety protocols. They are designed by Kundalini for you. You will not get instant acceptance from others just because you have the Kundalini. They'll sense a power in you, but it's not a power that you can use that way. You're no longer within the competitive formulations of life. You need to not ignore the Kundalini for the reward of pleasure, for the reward of acceptance, for the reward of self-aggrandizement. This is not a worthy trade at all for you. Okay. And I think I think you've learned a good lesson with this, Helly. And I think other people that have done the exact same thing as you have learned that very same lesson. It's also a lesson that Osho learned. You know, Osho lived to see his entire Rajneeshpuram in Oregon fall to pieces because of internal corruption. And he died, I think, a very poor man in India. He was I was going to say exported. I forget the word for not being allowed to stay in the United States. I'll just say he was exported back to India in order to live his life, and he died. Within that understanding. Muktananda, not so much. He was still heavily revered when he passed away, as was Yogananda, Vivekananda. It's very important for people who are wild awakeners, and this is awakening outside of Kundalini, or awakening outside of a religious authority, or a religious authority that recognizes Kundalini but doesn't necessarily understand it, because they base it upon individual experiences, and individual experiences will vary. And because those individual experiences will vary, there is not one set, generalized way that the Kundalini will awaken within a person. Okay. Let's see, where are we? Oh, I better go over here to Santara. Do you have any questions, dear Santara?
I do, but could I say a couple of things, Prism, about the topic? Would that be okay?
Sure. Please do.
I suppose something that came to me there as you're talking, and as Helly was, as you were reading Helly's question as well, is how, self-aggrandizement isn't always about, saying how powerful we are. In a way, it can be about satisfying our ego, aggrandizing its expression and control over us. Would that
drinking the alfalfa tea when the teacher says not to do it?
Really interesting, because believe it or not, last week I fell into a particular trap, and I was just thinking before you said that how, this trap you mentioned a couple of times about early on in your awakening, and I'm thinking, well, I'm still early on, but I'm a few years down the road, and still it has occurred where even last week I fell into the trap where I absolutely 100% disregarded. And I did what Helly really was referring to there, for the sake of my ego, my ego comfort and my ego aggrandizement, really. I went against what my teacher had instructed me, which my Kundalini had instructed me to do, for a very short term. It was horrible. I learned a huge thing in doing it. So I suppose I'm saying to people, it comes around. It's always there.
Well, look at Osho. And Osho was like decades into his quote unquote enlightenment, and he was doing, he was doing laughing gas, and he was doing other types of drugs as well. Drugs that really only satisfy the ego. It's not an ayahuasca is really not the most enjoyable experience that you could have. But, from a physiological standpoint, you're vomiting and you're, it's not like, marijuana or heroin or any of those types of things that would bring, on these false patterns of ecstasy. But nitrous oxide doesn't either. And yet he was decades into his awakening and a very popular teacher, very popular to the masses. Even to this day, they call him Osho, and he was Sri Rajneesh, whatever that word was. He was an older guy with gray hair coming out of his beard while he was doing that. And so you're right, Centaura. It can happen anytime, and you must always look. Go ahead.
Yeah, is it not happening at all? I mean, in another way, Kristen, what you're saying, I think, is, I'm saying that isn't it essential that Kundalini gives us this or allows this velvet trap? Like, isn't it essential for us to be exposed to this so that the choice is given whether we're going to grow that expression or, expose it for what it is?
Well, you have to have the equation in order to pass the test.
Yes. And I know, I agree. Yeah. Gosh, it's a great topic, Chris. And I wonder, does anybody have questions in the chat room about that specifically? Because it's a great topic, Chris. I can go on and start asking other questions as well.
Sure. But I'll answer any of the questions that come up.
Okay. And remember, will you give out the number as well there if anybody wanted to ring in and speak with you online?
The number is area code to call into the program. It is area code 347-934-0026. 347-934-0026.
Okay.
And I want to wait. I want to make an announcement that I am having a seminar in Minnesota on July 9th and 10th, I believe. Let me make sure that it's the same date.
Yes, it is 9th and 10th. That's correct.
9th and 10th, and I'll be in the Twin Cities area of Minnesota 5 days before that, giving talks around the Twin Cities area. I would like you to contact Rosemary G at usinternet.com. And she will give you the entire schedule. And if you are interested in participating in the seminar, this will be held on a restored prairie in the middle of the wilderness that has this small 100 acres of prairie has not been polluted by like Monsanto or agriculture growing soybeans and corn. It has been allowed to remain wild. And if you want to be a wild awakener, I suggest you come to this seminar. And I also am having a seminar in Berlin, Germany. And Amelia, can you give the announcement for that, the details?
I can indeed. I'm actually going to read something that Manisha has published. This is Manisha Manish, and she is the lady that is organizing the seminar in Berlin. So it's called Kundalini Awakening Berlin. Take part in the first Continental Kundalini Seminar with Chrism. Chris Mitchell, who comes all the way from California to Berlin to share his wisdom and knowledge and teachings of the Divine Kundalini. The seminar will be 2 full days, September 3rd and September 4th, 2016. And it will take place in a beautiful location in Agazentrabi. And she gives the address. The price is yet to be determined. You need to take care of your own accommodation as it is not an overnight residential group. So as soon as I know more, I will post more information. And Manisha is actually going to come here and talk to us, if not next week, the week after. So if you're listening to this and you're living in the Greater Europe area, or the UK or Ireland, well then September 3rd and 4th is what you need to plan for. You can come a day or two beforehand, stay a day or two afterward, but you might need to organize your work situation or baby minding situation. So do take note of those dates. September 3rd and 4th, that's when it's happening. hope to see many of you there.
Thank you, Amelia, and thank you, Manisha Manish. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm ready when you are, my dear.
Okay, going over to my questions. And the first question actually can connect in a bit to what you were speaking of with children. It says, why children of Kundalini awakened are sometimes more spiritually advanced than their parents?
Well, that's karma. Karma is involved with that. Are these Kundalini awakened parents or not?
I think that's why are children of Kundalini awakened sometimes more spiritually advanced than their. It's somebody who doesn't speak English as a first language. So could you answer it both ways?
Yeah. Kundalini will also, Kundalini parents having a family can bring in Kundalini awakened or people that are prone towards Kundalini awakened as children. I know that even you, Amelia, you have a child that is prone towards Kundalini awakened. Your second oldest, I believe, right?
Yes, I think I have two particularly, but particularly her.
And I know other people have nieces and nephews, they're Kundalini awakened, and yet their nieces and nephews are starting to show signs and symptoms of Kundalini awakening. I think that the Kundalini chooses the parents very carefully so that child is to be an awakening. And there is a wave of awakening coming into the world. It's just beginning. It's coming in, and they would be of a more advanced quality than their parents, by virtue of the fact that the Kundalini is beginning to assert itself upon the sociological environment of humanity. And this wave that is coming, well, that person that's coming could be a highly advanced soul that is here to ground and to hold the grace of the divine upon this world, so that as other people become activated and awakened by the Kundalini in this world, that there's more of a reference point, more of an outreach, more of an opportunity to have the help and the service that they will need inside of the veil of forgetfulness that everybody agrees to go through when they come here. Over.
Thank you, Clinton. Your chair is doing its thing there.
Oh, sorry. Let me click it up. Okay, here we go. Sorry.
Okay. Now, the next question you have responded to before, but I'm asking it because it came in. It says, my question for Chrism, how did he come to his Kundalini awakening?
Severe. Well, I was living in a place inside the Sierra Madre of Central California. I was living in a place called Yosemite Valley. And Yosemite Valley is this very, very beautiful glacial moraine valley that is inside of towering, 4,000-foot granite walls comprised of crystals. And I was very, very spiritually oriented even as a child. And this was, I had Kundalini as a child. I came into the body with the signs and symptoms of Kundalini awakening. But no, my parents didn't know. I was not born inside of a family equation that supported Kundalini or even supported religion at all, which turned out later on to be a saving grace. But at the time, it was just, you don't know what's occurring. As the Yosemite Valley has in the wintertime, it has about 100 waterfalls falling 4,000 feet, forming a mist in the valley. In the spring and early summer and actually in the fall as well, there is a phenomena called the Mono winds, which come from Mono Lake, that is about 7,000 feet, and they come through the valleys. And as I don't know if you know anything about the effect of wind as it is constricted by valleys, well, it increases its velocity. These mono winds would come into the Yosemite Valley. It would pick up the negative ionic activity of the falling water droplets or the mist, and it would swirl them into like this whirlpool of negative ionic activity. This would amplify what I already had going as a child within my system. And then I went through this terrible, terrible, terrible trauma. And this trauma activated the Kundalini in the current body, the physical body I have right now, in addition to the awakened aspect that I already had going. And that's what basically turned my spine into a serpent that I could feel traveling horizontally as well as vertically. And from there, it just increased in its amplitude and its velocity until, even though I didn't know what was occurring, it didn't care. It erupted into an activation, and from there into an awakening. That's what happened to me. Over.
Thank you, Chrism. The next question is, I don't think I asked this before. It's one of the ones I missed. But if I've asked it, Chrism, tell me, does an open crown chakra guarantee enlightenment?
No.
Over?
It guarantees. No. It guarantees your availability to it. But if you have fallen into that trap, I don't care how open your crown is, you've fallen into that trap. You have subverted what was given to you. And it's not saying that that you can't correct yourself. Of course you can correct yourself. But at that moment, you will not have what is considered to be enlightenment. There are two things with enlightenment. And you can differentiate it with spelling. One spelling of enlightenment is this: I-N space L-I-G-H-T-E-N space M-E-A-N-T. Enlightenment. Okay, it was meant for humans to have enlightenment, or they wouldn't have a pineal gland that could be lit up by the Kundalini coming up the spine. And the other aspect of enlightenment is, E-N-L-I-G-H-T-E-N-M-E-N-T, which is, the enlightenment of grace descending upon and arising within the individual. An open crown chakra, if it's opened by Kundalini and say not a top-down scenario, say being artificially opened by psilocybin or even ayahuasca or Syrian rue or any of the entheogens that people like to try to find enlightenment with. If it's coming, say, from a bottom up, the pineal gland gets lit up, and this is what can provide levels of enlightenment. The person, depending on their karma, of course, and depending on how they achieved this scenario, can receive heavenly infusion, but it's not a guarantee. It's not always a guarantee. A person still has to work it. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I came into this body with Kundalini Awakening from other past lives, other lifetime experiences. I'd already had this. I had all the phenomena as a child, and I tried to explain that to my parents, and they were starting to get a little worried because they couldn't understand it at all, and neither could any of my siblings or anybody really at all. They even took me to a counselor once and said, "Well, go ahead and tell the counselor, honey, what you're experiencing, honey." And I knew not to do that, so I just sat there and drew stick pictures for her and didn't say a word until they finally just stopped deciding to waste the money on me having a counselor. Thank God the Kundalini in me, gave me that instruction, even though at the time I didn't know it was. That kind of threw me off a little bit on my stream. What was the question again?
Does the open crown chakra guarantee enlightenment?
Yeah. Okay. And so the open crown chakra can give a person an immediate infusion of grace but it doesn't guarantee enlightenment at all. A person still has to live and work and behave and express within the teachings that their open crown is exposing them to. That is the new road to enlightenment. And enlightenment is never, it's not a place that you, all of a sudden, boom, you're enlightened, you don't have anything else to do, right? It's not a final destination. Enlightenment is an ever-evolving experience that will evolve past the experience of being a spirit in a body or a consciousness in a physical body. Over.
Thanks, Chrism. Now, I just want to know if it is fine to give hugs to family and friends as a greeting or a thank you, or should it be avoided if you're Kundalini activated?
Say again?
I just want to know if it is fine to give hugs to family and friends as a greeting or a thank you, or should it be avoided when you're Kundalini activated? Thank you.
What are you giving them? Hope? Hosts? What?
Hugs.
Spell it.
Hugs. Hugs.
Oh, thank you. Hugs. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. That's okay. You're all right. Give them a hug. Give them a nice, big, love-infused hug. Anyone and everyone.
Yeah, I assume the person is concerned about, that's Shakti patting them or something. Would you think? I mean.
Well, I understand their concern, but I also understand that the Kundalini knows and the Karma knows, and so if that person is being hugged, if they're even in the proximity of an awakened Kundalini person, that itself is not accidental either. Mm. It's just like me. If I'm standing behind a person in the grocery store line, and because they're inside of my radiance, they activate because of that radiance, that was there to be done. I had to get up at a certain time in the morning. They had to get up a certain time in the morning. They had to go through their entire daily process. I had to go through my entire daily process, and all of a sudden, boom, we meet. Well, come on. That's not accidental.
Yeah.
Over.
So keep hugging and all as well.
Keep hugging, keep loving, keep interacting from a love-based scenario. And if the people come into your radiance are activated because of that radiance, well, that's not accidental. But you can send them over to the Kundalini Awakening Safeties at KundaliniAwakeningSystems1.com, and that's the number 1.com. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Next question. Are entities and attachments similar, and can they transcend with you?
Oftentimes.
Okay, let me finish that. Can I add a bit to that, Chris, because that came from the group. Are entities and attachments similar? Can they transcend with you? I feel so strong and I am letting go and surrendering to my Kundalini, but I am having a hard time with my telepathic abilities. Do we all go through this process? Okay.
No, not everybody. Telepathy is not a guarantee for every person. Neither is telekinesis or levitation or any of those things. Yes, entities are attachments. They attach to you. They can also, by attachment, that means they attach to the body, but they can attach to the intestines. They can attach to the heart. They can attach to the lungs. They can attach to various areas of the body. Having problems with telepathy basically means that you're not mature enough within the Kundalini to have developed a series of filtration. And if, I'm getting a certain level of aggrandizement with this person by even saying it the way they said it. Okay. So within that, they need to be careful about stepping into that trap, that velvet trap, number one. And as they are careful to not step into that trap, the filtration will be given. Over.
Okay, Kirsten, thank you. Can you say more about entities and attachments, though? Would you have more to say about that?
Yeah, for instance, if you go to a funeral, let's say Aunt Jenny recently passed away, and she was deathly afraid of dying. It was a very, very fearful event for her, and she died. And yet, say you were at her bedside, or as she was dying, you were witnessing the event. Well, her consciousness can jump into your body, and then you will be hosting Aunt Jenny for the rest of your life, and Aunt Jenny can indeed travel with you into your death and into the next expression. Also, with regards to entities in general, some entities can indeed embed themselves within you because they're embedding themselves along the line of a karmic lesson that has not been learned, that has not been balanced by you in this time. And so they attach to the karma. And by attaching to your karma, they attach to you. And they can come with you into your next expression. Yes, indeed. Over.
Okay. Thanks, Kristen. From the group again, slightly out of context perhaps, so I'm hoping, okay, so it says, really deep intuition and such, is that karma and other things you've mentioned connected to Kundalini, or are they separate forces like gravity or velocity?
Oh, I see. Karma and Kundalini are separate forces. Karma is a law. Kundalini is divine. Kundalini is divine consciousness. Karma is a consciousness of law, the law of evolution. Getting a little noise there.
Okay.
Over.
Sorry, that could have been me. Deep intuition. Where does that come into? How does that fit into?
Well, I mean, what is deep intuition? What is that?
What would that be? That could be maybe.
Does intuition have physical-based measurements of depth to it? Can you have like 3 feet of intuition or 100 feet of intuition? It's like a Kundalini-ometer. I mean, when she says, or they're saying deep intuition, are they giving an example of what that would be?
Well, I know that the example, this person gave an example of something that occurred in the group, which I don't have in front of me, but it was about leaving a particular place with her family because she had, you might recall it, I think you read it, she had a deep intuition.
She's confusing. I see. I know who you're talking about. Deep intuition. Well, she calls it deep intuition. You know, that could just be the ability to sense a forthcoming detrimental event. That's not necessarily intuition. You know, she's calling it intuition when in fact, you know, that could be her Kundalini simply saying, don't get in the car now.
Yes, so I suppose it's about, and maybe she's wondering, defining or trying to see that is what it is, Kundalini. What is deep intuition as opposed to Kundalini?
Right. I hear that now. Yeah, this person was guided not to get into the car, and the husband followed the guidance, and they avoided being in this terrible accident. And she's questioning about her intuition, and you know, and she's had Kundalini experiences, and so I would say this was not anything other than Kundalini guidance to protect the family, you know, against a severe accident. This is a precognitive Kundalini warning.
Kundalini communication to her, then.
Yes.
Is it? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
If she's had Kundalini experiences and she's having intuition, well, intuition is really Kundalini's ball game after you start having Kundalini symptoms.
Yes, so you leave this intuition thing and all that's attached to that, and you let that go, and you begin to see that this is a communication from Kundalini and guidance from Kundalini, and you don't even use the word intuition anymore. Okay,
exactly,
thanks, Chris.
Exactly. That's right. And Cole, I see that you're typing. Wait a minute, Cole, I see you're typing, and I see you've been typing for a long time. We only have 20 minutes left. I just want you to know. Go ahead.
Okay, I don't think I asked you this, Chrism. Again, it's from a couple of weeks ago. Why do some people get spontaneous Kundalini awakenings? I know it has come up before in
That's
different
right. That's
guises.
Right. When the fruit is ripe, the fruit will fall, and you know, karmically, people are just. I don't like to use the word predestined, but they are predestined to have Kundalini. When your karma has reached a certain level of purity, the evolutionary ideal of the human being is to have the Kundalini erupt within the person. It is not dormant at the base of the spine just because God didn't have anywhere else to put it. When a person's karma gets to a certain level of purity, Kundalini will come up. It will activate. And whether that activation is because of a sporting accident or a Shakti pot or a trauma such as I experienced or other people, an emotional trauma, severe grief, whatever it may be, that Kundalini will come up. Because it is time for that person to have the Kundalini come up. Over.
Thank you, Chrism. That's it really with the questions. There is something I'd like to ask you. Could you speak about this, about asking the Kundalini why? Wanting to understand what's happening within the context of your process. And what should a person do about that? Should they ask the Kundalini why, or can they ask that in the context of surrender? Could you speak a little bit about that, if I'm making sense?
That's very good. Thank you. That's a very good question, Amelia. I get this a lot. It's like, why? I get this, why would they give me a teacher that's as brutal as you? I get that a lot. Why? Everyone
thinks that was me now.
Am I in hell, or is this real? What's going on here? Why would the Kundalini make me do this? Why would the Kundalini make me do that? That in and of itself is not appropriate, because it's forming a judgment inside of a question. Okay. So if you're asking a question, why would the Kundalini make me do this? Or why would the Kundalini have me do that? On the one hand, that is what I just said. On the other hand, it's important for you to ask that question, because that might be an entity that you're confusing for Kundalini. Entities just love that. Entity will come to you and say, Amelia, I am God, the God of the Bible, the God of Christ. You who are a Christian, you belong to me now, and let's go to the casino. So no. You don't get to judge the Kundalini by asking a question, but you can ask the Kundalini, why am I being asked to steal that man's wallet? Then you know that it's not the Kundalini. Anything that is unethical is not the Kundalini. But if you have a teacher, you can have the teacher clarify that for you. Now, I would like to ask Cole to stop writing now. Okay, I've got a little bit of time left, and I can't do a book. So yeah, it is important to question the Kundalini, but don't question it as a whine, W-H-I-N-E. Don't question it as a complaint. Authentically question it, because you need to know the answer. That is perfectly all right. And she may, and he may or may not give you that answer. Don't have the expectation that the answer will be provided to you. Ask the question. Okay. If it's answered, then it is answered, but don't expect it to be answered. Now I better get to Cole's thing here. Cole writes, here we go. Could you share some insight into the more predominant organizations, the political bodies in this world with corruptive agendas? All of them, Cole. All of them. Divinity is infinitely more powerful than corruption, but I can't help but feel that higher levels of clarity and awareness around these agendas could help ameliorate their effect on humanity, if that is appropriate. Social democracy is really one of the better held political expressions that is being rabidly fought against. But the people are starting to rise up in support of that. But even within social democracy, like we see with Britain and Norway and Sweden and all these, these other places, is not perfect. Because anywhere where you have mundane human consciousness involved in a political organization that is set to control how people live their lives, you'll have levels of corruption, depending on the level of the leader that you suggest. And so for me, in my opinion, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are both so corrupt that they are virtually worthless as political leaders. Bernie Sanders, or I forget the other one. There's another senator there that's not running. They would have more of a standing as a vessel of divine intuition without being Kundalini awakened than, say, Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton would be. And then let's not forget all of the entities that like to control political people. They plug into them, and because they're sleeping, almost all of them are sleeping, then they're all actually, open to entity investment. And it is through, there's a big tug of war, within the individual on what is the right thing to do. And when you're corrupted by money, or you're corrupted for the passion of power and control over other people, if you use those as a basis for becoming a leader, then you're going to lose. If you use beneficial, health care for all, paying the genders equally, all the different things that a social democrat would aspire towards, that is a higher quality of political expression than the other expressions I mentioned, and that would have a closer level towards divine commitment than the other one would. Either way, people are being tested constantly. The populations are being tested in their gullibility towards being manipulated through television, through radio, through internet. And at the same time, the individual politician is also being tested for their contempt or beneficial thought streams and intentions towards the populations. And so what I've noticed here in the United States as of our presidential 2016, there is a pull towards social democracy that is not being supported by older people, but is being supported mostly by younger people. And this is a harbinger of things to come, I feel. And he also says, not just humanity, but all creation on the planet. Yeah. As you're able to give to each other in a loving and blissful way, so are you able to give into the environment in a very similar way. Those are excellent questions, Cole. I'm impressed with the depth and the clarity of your questions. Thank you for posting them or for writing them here. Do you have other questions, Amelia? Guess not. You put yourself in the blue. Okay. I would like to let people know that you can go to YouTube, the YouTube network, put in the search window there, Chrism Kundalini, and about 340 some odd videos all about your Kundalini expression will come up for you. It's free. I'd also like you to explore Facebook. If you're on Facebook, Kundalini Awakening ! Kundalini Awakening Systems 2, Kundalini Awakening Systems 3, Kundalini People, Kundalini Healing. We have a private and a public group for Kundalini Healing, Kundalini Awakening Systems 1, which is a secret group. You have to friend me to get onto any of the closed or secret groups. I'm Chris Mitchell on Kundalini or on Facebook. I also have Kundalini Healing Public on Yahoo and Kundalini Awakening Systems 1 at Yahoo. I have Kundalini Awakening exclamation point on Google Plus, and many Kundalini blogs. If you'd like to make a donation, you can go to Chrism. Which one is that, Amelia?
What are we saying, Chrism? Say that again. Sorry.
You weren't listening to any of this, were you?
I was distracted, I will admit.
The donation. What's the donation site that you're?
I beg your pardon. Of course, I know what that is, and I hadn't announced it at all. It is www.chrism-kundalini.blogspot.com.
So
you can make a donation.
Yeah. And thank you very much for that. Chrism-Kundalini at blogspot.com. And I have about 5 or 6 blogs out into the blogosphere, as they call it. I'm doing my very, very best that I can to bring this knowledge into the greater environment, as well as levels of books that are going to be self-published, I guess, on Amazon, and really, 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 really look at whether or not you are stepping into the velvet trap of Kundalini narcissism. Look at that. It can happen any time during your Kundalini awakening experience at this time in your body. Be very, very careful not to want people to worship you, not to want people to come to you for everything, not to want people to give their lives to you, or to really, you're not allowed to want this to occur. Like with Osho, Sri Bhagwan Rajneesh. You don't get to do this. And just because you think that there's Jiva Mukti doesn't mean that you are. Because if you think you are Jiva Mukti, then you are not Jiva Mukti, which means, powerful to the Kundalini. That's all just ego aggrandizement. I want to thank Elizabeth and all the listeners on the telephone. I would like to thank everybody in the chat room and everybody listening in the future archives. I would like to thank my co-host, Amelia Santara, for whom this show even exists. This is her devotion to you, that she has allowed this program to exist, and I want to thank her specifically for that gift. Everybody, I'm going to go ahead and I have 7 minutes left, and I want to thank everyone for their donations that they have given, especially recently. I have to wait a certain amount of time before I can use any of it because of this, internet. But I am very, very grateful to my current students. I'm very, very grateful to everybody that's on the many different groups. All said and told, we have about 20,000 people that are reading this work. Not saying they're all students, but they're definitely reading this work. And I want to really expand that as much as possible. We'll be making some more videos along those lines. If you have any suggestions for videos that you'd like to make, please email me at K as in Kundalini, fire for all. That's KFIREFORALL at yahoo.com, and I'd be glad to make a video about that if it's within reason. Like I won't go into that. I would like to thank those who have given the gifts of being able to even have this show, like Josephine Smith and Santara and Elizabeth and other people, and it's a great honor to be able to teach and to give and to live the Kundalini life. It's not an easy life because we live in a world that is really anti-Kundalini in a way. It's a pro-ego and anti-Kundalini. But this is where our karma becomes purified. And as I said before, as your karma reaches a level of purification, your Kundalini will awaken. And I encourage you to go to Kundalini Awakening Systems 1, Safeties, and begin to live your life from the expression of the safeties upon this world. Amelia, do you have anything you'd like to say before we go?
There is something I would like to say, actually, Chrism, to people. I think that as a community of people, we receive so much from the Kundalini in Chrism. And I feel, the community here, the community on Facebook, and the many different communities that we are. And I think that we are also being given an opportunity to open our hearts and to give something back, to that source that gives to us, and that we can, I think it's important that we don't just take and take and take and not also give back. I think, we can create stagnation and blockages in ourselves that impede our progress when we do not return. So there are various ways that we can open our hearts and that we can give back. And one of these that is particularly needed at this moment in time is to give in a financial way and to provide for to return for what is being given and provided for us. So what is happening at the moment is I'm going to be having another group, and it's going to be one that I would like to invite people to come and join, and it's going to be a donation group. And so I would really ask you to consider, again, contributing, and the place you can go to immediately would be www.chrism-kundalini.blogspot.com, but also please do go to the Kundalini Awakening exclamation group and join this new group that I am going to set up, and open your hearts to also, for your progress, to give back. So that's it, Chrism. I really wanted to just say that today in the group. And thank you very much for that velvet trap and the talk for today. It means a lot to me, and I think to a lot of other people as well. Thanks indeed. And thanks to everybody who joined us, and see you next week.
Thank you, Amelia. And thank you, everybody, for listening to this. This is very important. If you have any questions about this and you're on any of the groups that I mentioned, or you can just private email me, I'm open to helping anybody with this that I can help. I will go ahead and end this program the way I began it, and many thanks to the Kundalini, the grace of the divine, and may it always express through you in a positive, loving, and powerful way that doesn't affect your ego with the power. All right, here we go. Here we go.